So hello again, everyone, and welcome to the latest in our series of lockdown webcasts that we're bringing you from Travel Weekly to keep you all connected. And I'm delighted to say we've got the return of two guests who've already been on earlier in the last couple of weeks. So we've got Amanda Matthews, who is the owner of Designer Travel, and we've got Miles Morgan, who is the chairman at Miles Morgan Travel. So thank you both very much for coming on again. We're just entering week 10 of lockdown. It seems like we've been in our own homes working on the stairs for you, Amanda, and working from home for a long time. But I wondered if we could just sort of revisit things and find out, where things are with both your businesses, what things are still a challenge, but where you're seeing also a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, because things do seem to be easing a little bit now. We're starting to see some movement. So let's start with you, Amanda. How are you finding things now?
I mean, it's a lot more positive for definite. Probably over the last 4 weeks or so, we've started to see a much bigger new booking ratio, and not just rebooks and cancellations and credit notes. So that's been really good, and that we launched a lockdown your prices campaign about the same time, and we've been trying to kind of explain to clients why they would be better booking now for 2021, which seems to have gone down really well. And a lot of our clients have now understood that actually booking now and guaranteeing their prices for 2021 is not such a, is a really good idea. So that's really helped us. So that's really positive. We've still got issues in terms of refunds. We're still waiting for a number of suppliers to turn around refunds more quickly. So, we still have got some client issues, but not compared to the amount we had, a little while ago. The other challenge we've got is still the same as we had before in the tour operators. Even though we're getting a lot more inquiries in, there's still a lot of tour operators that have still furloughed lots of staff. So it's taking much longer to turn around new inquiries, unless they're online, of course. And then the other one is that where we're trying to move clients who are unhappy about travelling in July and August this year, where they're on a low-cost carrier, especially EasyJet and Ryanair, it's still a nightmare because they haven't released their full programmes. So that puts us in a really difficult, and the supplier position, because you can't just move the accommodation when you don't know whether the flight's going to go out or not. So those kind of very complex dilemmas, whether they be a multi-contract package or part of a package with a supplier, are proving to be difficult. And they're kind of things that we understand. But when you try and explain that to a client, it's really not that simple. They can see EasyJet holidays on sale for 2021. Well, why can't we change to 2021? Because we've got EasyJet flights. So those are, are proving to be a bit of a challenge. But compared to where we were, the challenges are now in the minority, whereas the positive new bookings are starting to, to come into their own and be a much bigger part of our daily job, which is making life a lot more pleasurable.
Okay, well, I'm pleased about that. Just let's pick up on a couple of things before we come on to you, Mars. I mean, when you have got that situation where you can't book a flight then for 2021, are you then losing the customer? Are they then saying, well, I'll have my money back? Or are you still managing to negotiate and get them to wait, and you hope, I guess, that these airlines do put their flights on sale?
Well, you've got two choices, really. If the client is happy to travel, if the holiday goes ahead, then really what we're doing is recommending to the client that they do pay their balance, and then they hope that that holidays will travel in the summer, and they will get to travel on the holiday that they've booked. If the clients are in a position where whatever happens, they do not want to travel, and there are quite a few clients that fall into both categories, then actually the safest thing for them to do, if the low-cost carriers are not out, would be to cancel and they lose their deposit. Now, a lot of the suppliers are giving us credit notes for the deposit, which is really positive, but not everybody, because obviously the supplier will be taking the hit on the flight if that flight goes ahead. So it's all very complicated, but that is the only position we've been able to kind of recommend at the moment.
Yeah, it's difficult. Let's bring you in, Miles. Where are you? Are you sort of seeing more positives than negatives, like Amanda?
Yeah, I think it's been a challenging time, and I think we've been kind of climbing the hill for the last probably 7 to 8 weeks, and I actually think we're finally freewheeling a little bit down the other side. I think the media seem bored with constant bad news and looking for some positives, and I think, you know, the announcement about Spain at the weekend is a really, really positive one. I think all we need now is Priti Patel and those guys to get their act together and realise that 14 days quarantine from the 8th of June is a completely mad idea. If it's a good idea, they should be doing it now. If it's not a good idea, why the hell are they bringing it on the 8th of June? It's a complete farce as far as I'm concerned. It's either a good idea or it's not, and it should be brought in. So I think as soon as that one gets knocked on the head, I think potentially we could be looking at some flying over the summer, which I have to say, even 10 days ago, if you'd asked me, I'd say it's pretty unlikely. But now I'd say it's more likely than not, which is, it's got to be great news for the industry and finding some positive stuff that sort of sets us all going, and the momentum is finally returning. As Amanda said, you know, new bookings are there, they're growing by the day, by the week, whereas that wasn't the case when we were climbing the hill. It was tough going with reprotects and all that, but now the green shoots of new bookings are definitely there, and they're a reality.
All right, let's come back to new bookings in a minute, but just on this quarantine thing, I mean, were you sort of encouraged with the idea of the air bridges, or did that just add more confusion? And when you say, you know, let's just knock it on the head, do you think there is a chance then that they might go, do you know what, this wasn't a good idea after all, we'll just scrap it?
Well, the air bridges make absolute sense. So if you think about it, every country now has an R number, a rate of infection number. If we've got an air bridge to, say, Spain, and Spain have a lower R number than ours, then it's madness to suggest people are at more risk when they go to Spain. In fact, they're at less risk. So therefore, what is the point of 14 days quarantine where the place they visited is actually safer than the United Kingdom at the moment? So to me, it doesn't make any logic in any sense whatsoever. And I'm hoping that common sense will prevail and they'll say, actually, yeah, let's bring it in. Absolutely for countries that have got a high R rate. But for those that haven't, well, let's just open those air bridges and get people flowing back in too.
Yeah, and so now you're saying 10 days ago you weren't even sure there would be any sort of summer, but so for customers now that still got bookings for July, August, are you now saying actually I think they'll go ahead, or what are you saying to customers?
Yeah, but bizarrely I've moved to it's always great to have something to worry about. I've moved to something else to worry about, which is if the flights now operate, and I've got lots of elderly customers, and that's what I've got generally in my portfolio of clients. What happens if they actually don't want to travel because they're worried about it, and yet the holiday company is saying, well, this is still operating. So normal terms and conditions apply. This is still operating for August. And my client's saying, well, I'm 71, I'm at risk, I don't want to go. So there might be some interesting conversations ahead with that. And of course, we've also got the FCO advice, which still hasn't changed from non-essential travel, is unlimited currently. So that needs to be looked at as well. And it would be wonderful, and I've been saying this for a while, the FCO advice at no end date is absolutely useless to everybody. They just need to put a date on it, and it would clarify it for holiday companies, clarify it for airlines, clarify it for customers, and make life as a travel agent massively easier than unlimited, which really helps none of those people.
Yeah, it's in an indefinite timescale. Is that a problem for you, Amanda? And what confidence do you have that they will lift that or put a date on it, as Miles suggests?
Well, I mean, I think if you look at what happened when we were going into this with lots of the countries closing down, in the key was the countries that closed down first were those that have the higher infection numbers. And that's exactly, as Miles said, is what needs to happen now, is where we've got a situation where the virus is under control in certain destinations, then we need to have this reciprocal agreement with those countries, and actually be confident with our clients that they are travelling to somewhere that's no more of a risk than staying at home, going down to Cornwall. So I think that's really critical. I think that the issue with the government at the moment is they seem to be putting out information that's conflicting all the time. And like, Miles said, this quarantine, why not start it straight away instead of waiting until the 8th of June? I mean, I don't think there'll be anything going out until the end of June, early July at the very earliest for leisure travel. So in some ways, the message is really a bit of a red herring at this point, because until the leisure travel starts to pick up and starts to operate, then at that point they can amend this rule. They're going to review it every 3 weeks anyway. So my feel is at the moment they're just holding back because it's still all a bit up in the air and a bit unclear. But as things start to clear and the virus seems to be kind of, disappearing across Europe and, in other parts of the world, then I think we'll have a much clearer space. Miles' point is exactly right, though. A lot of people that have had departures in June have not cancelled. They've waited because they are, there's been quite it's been quite positive that those holidays were not going to travel. So it was a much easier sell in June, where people have paid their balances for early July and August, where they're thinking they're falling into that category and can get a refund. Then I do think that there will be some tough conversations that we've got to have with customers and suppliers, especially for those older clients who, are really fearful of leaving their house.
Yeah, and then they might want to cancel, but as Miles said, if the holidays is going ahead, then they're obviously going to lose their deposit.
Yeah, and the foreign advice, I'm guessing, will have moved on. The insurance, there won't be anything that's saying you cannot go, therefore the insurance is unlikely to cover them. So, I think some of the suppliers will be really flexible, as they have been, having to be flexible over the last kind of 9-10 weeks. So we've just got to hope that people kind of think about the longer game rather than just the short term.
Okay, and you mentioned insurance there. It's a good point. I know, Miles, you were talking on ITV about travel insurance. It's a really important point, because even if they open up borders and flights start again and the Foreign Office advice changes, if you can't get travel insurance, people aren't going to be confident to travel anyway. And so I know a couple of weeks ago we were reporting that most companies, we spoke to Debbie Marshall from Silver Travel Advisor, and she was saying that most companies had taken anything to do with COVID out of any policies, and they weren't putting it in for new policies. So are you finding it hard to get insurance on the holidays that you're saying on these new bookings, or what's this for?
It's definitely a challenge. I think what we saw is immediately insurance companies, being what they are, very risk averse, immediately took COVID out of every single new policy sold. I understand from speaking to people that now is changing, and some insurance policies now put it in for people when they're in resort, but we've still got to have insurance that will cover people if they potentially have COVID before travel and have to cancel. And so undoubtedly people have to have adequate insurance to travel. It's madness at any time, never mind now, to go away without insurance. And so that one needs to be cracked alongside all the other ones that we put on the list. But I'm hopeful that the way things are going and the winds have changed, that actually that one will also come in line with all the other things we've talked about.
And you think, and that's just a time thing, is it? You think it's happening, or do we need to put more pressure on the insurance companies to make sure?
Insurance is all about risk. So they'll be looking at the rate of infection, just like everybody else is looking at it, and going, okay, what's the probability of people having to cancel? What's the probability of people being ill while they're abroad? It's a risk game. And I think as they see infection rates reduce, they will gain confidence, the insurance companies, the underwriters, and they will look at it differently and potentially put it back into the policies, because they feel more comfortable that, the amount of claims will not be substantial. Okay.
All right. Well, let's hope that happens. I wanted to ask you, obviously last week we saw the very sad demise of Shearings. I don't know whether, you talked, Miles, about having lots of more mature people in your database. Were you affected by that at all? And of course, lots of people are saying, well, this could be the tip of the iceberg and many more companies can go. And of course, that's been the whole issue around people taking credit notes in case their company was to, the company they're traveling with was to fail. So have you been affected by that at all?
Yeah, we've obviously had passengers that were booked with Shearings that now sadly are cancelled. I think if there is a worrying element to it, is Shearings was a very well-run business with good people in that organisation. And when you see businesses like that failing, that should be a worry to all of us, because businesses with good people running them and businesses run well generally don't fail. And so it's a sign for all of us that actually the environment we're operating in is a very, very tough one. I think potentially we might see things flatten out a bit now in terms of casualties, but I think the announcement this week about what's happening with furlough and what percentage employers are going to have to pay come August is absolutely pivotal in what's going to happen next with travel, and particularly with collapses, because as soon as people have to start paying, and it's rumoured to be 25% of people's salaries, that is at the point where people will decide, actually, let's just offload some staff, let's keep our staff. Decisions will have to be made in boardrooms up and down the country, And that will be when we could see, unfortunately, more casualties. I really hope that's not the case, but that, I think, will be the next timeline.
Yeah, because of course they extended it to October, which sounded like a really good lifeline, but we didn't know the detail, and I know it's still not confirmed, but that would be a big cost to companies which have had no income coming in for the last 2 months. Is that something that you worry about, Amanda? Because you mentioned already that you're struggling with operators who just don't have the staff because they're furloughed half their staff. And if Miles is, I know he doesn't want it to happen, but if he's right that people could either have to let some staff go, that's going to be more pressure on those tour operators and more pressure on you to try and get hold of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think the same as Miles. I mean, what we don't know, of course, is how quickly things are going to recover, how many, if things do open up in the summer, how busy we're going to have with inquiries for new bookings to generate income. And that's the big unknown at the moment, because what you've got with every travel company is it's not just a case of you've got no income coming in, you've also had a lot of income going out in paying back cancelled bookings, whether you're a company or whether you're an individual home worker who's self-employed. So we all find ourselves in a situation where we're already sitting in minus figures, and we've had the help of the furlough scheme for those that have got employees. So I think there's a couple of questions. One is, when the details of this new scheme that extends to October comes out, which is supposed to be by the end of this month, how much is that going to help us to save jobs in the long term versus having to make some very difficult decisions, sooner than we would have hoped that we'd had to make any. Equally, if things do bounce back quickly, then we might be in a better position than we thought. And that bit, I suppose, at the moment is a wait and see, and see what happens over the next kind of 3 or 4 weeks.
Well, when talking about government announcements, obviously, as well as talking about Dominic Cummings, the government did obviously announce around the reopening of non-essential retail outlets, so for June the 15th. So I guess that would include travel agencies, even though we'd like to think they were essential right from the start. But what does that mean for you, Miles? And then we'll come on to Amanda. I know she's only got one shop, but you've got a few shops. So what does that mean for you?
I don't know yet, if I'm perfectly honest. It will be demand driven in a lot of ways, because we have a number of things to weigh up. We have to weigh up how customers are feeling about returning to the travel agency. We've got to look at the staff, how they feel about returning, what we do in terms of safety and PPE and things like that. And at the moment, the government haven't published exactly what they're expecting retailers to do. I think it's probably fair to say we can see from what happens in supermarkets, garden centres, the blueprint is probably there for what they're going to require us to do. But I think the big question for us is, how much demand will there be from our customers to return to the shops in the short term? As Amanda said, things are picking up. We're talking about another 2 weeks. Now, another 2 weeks, we could be looking at a very, very different world where, things are open, people's confidence has risen dramatically, and we need to put more staff on, because at the moment, I probably only got one full-time equivalent in every one of my shops. And from a safety perspective, that's not a good idea in a shop either. So I have to bear that one in mind. So there's a lot of things to be taken into account. And from a personal perspective, I'm going to be sitting on my hands probably for the next couple of weeks, just to see what happens and how the industry plays out and how customers are reacting, how demand is reacting, what's going to happen, because they're obviously going to open car showrooms. How busy will they be? Because obviously the news will probably report that. It's going to be fascinating to see how the unlock happens, how quickly it unfolds, and how people return.
Well, I think we could have seen from the weekend, I think lots of people were out and about, weren't they, enjoying their bank holiday. So people do seem to be ready, but I know what you mean. So in any case, it won't be all your shops open on June the 15th. That won't happen. You're going to just wait and see. And Amanda, for your shop, you've similar to Miles?
I mean, I think that the one thing that we've got to be careful of is, I know we've only got one retail shop, but it's a shuttered shop. So if we don't open or are not seen to be opening, I don't want the local population that trade with us to think that we've gone out of business and we're closed. So from the 15th of June, we will find a way of, even if it's appointment only, we will rise, the shutters will come up, and even if we keep the door locked and we have a 1 in, 1 out policy, but we will find a way even if it's not full time, we will be looking at making sure that we look like we're open and that we're still there trading.
Okay. And presumably, I mean, Miles, you mentioned the PPE and the screens, and I mean, do you think that's something I guess if the guidelines are that you have to have it, I guess you'll have to have it, but that potentially could sort of ruin the experience of coming in and chatting to a travel advisor. So I guess it's balancing that, really.
Well, there's a lot of things to be thought about. For a start, our wonderful teas and coffees will be a thing of the past in the short term. We won't be able to do them, which is sad. I think we've got to look at things like brochures. Customers pick up lots of brochures and put them back on the rack and then take the ones they need. What do we do about brochures? Because that also has an impact. So there's a whole host of things. You've got the physical screens, but there are also lots of other things to think about before you open, where you just need to be careful. I mean, Amanda's point is right. The counter to it is you look like you're closed. So there is a balance to it. We also, of course, got foreign exchange bureaus in all our shops. So they've already got glazing in them. So we could potentially trade out the foreign exchange bureau if we wanted, because, that's secure and it's perfect for using clients at the moment.
That's a good idea. No one's actually mentioned that yet. That's a great idea. All right. Well, look, let's move on to the more positive stuff. I'm really keen to talk to you both. You're both saying that bookings are now coming in. So it'll be interesting to know what is selling well, if it's particular destinations or is it a bit of everything, and which seasons and what kind of people are booking. So maybe start with you, Mand. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, we've been seeing some kind of real progress in the new bookings over the last 4 weeks or so. Last week, I never thought I would say this, but I was delighted that we were only 26% down. It's like, how can you ever be in a place where you're happy to be 26% down? But I think it was amazing. But it's a real variety. So we've got big bookings in there of £50,000 to Sandy Lane, but we've also got big family reunions booking for 2021, where they're all there's a 40 odd people in a big family going to Turkey from all over the countries. But if I was generalising, it would be families for next summer. Adults only, honeymoons that are doing really well because people are having to move their wedding dates and therefore they're now looking at their honeymoons. Easter was a big hit for us in the last couple of weeks. Florida's been really good, but the really kind of interesting stat is that just even if you take our snapshot last week, we did 80 bookings. Only 3 were for 2020. Only 15 were for departures up to the end of March. So all of the other bookings were for after March. So generally, what is booking is later than Easter onwards for 2021. The other thing I think for travel agents, somebody like TUI, who we can't ordinarily support very well because we cannot compete with their prices online, because they have closed their shops, they seem to have taken a more kind of proactive view with dealing with the travel trade. So we have also found there's an opportunity for us to promote the TUI holidays, where apart from we need to get them to help us with the deposits, because those are just not comparable between their own website and ours. And at the minute, we're helping them with booking some of their holidays for 2021.
So they're giving it to this price parity on the holiday, but not on deposit.
On the holiday than there usually is with TUI, but
right.
Their deposit. So if we're having to charge £200 online, it might be 75.
Right.
And when we're asking people to pay for 2021, I think if they, at the moment, depending upon what they're doing with their shops, but if they do need help and support from from the independent travel agents, then they need to look across the board and be a bit fairer with all of their, not just the prices, but their deposits too. But there are opportunities, because at the moment, there's no travel agents open. There's a lot of home workers who are self-employed out there open. There's a lot of independent agents like Miles working from home. Equally, there are lots and lots of furloughed staff from other companies that does provide us with a short-term opportunity.
Okay. Are you selling much TUI? Well, you sell some anyway, don't you, Miles?
Yeah, we always sell a reasonable amount of TUI just from the geographical location and the flying they have, particularly from Bristol. So we always sell some. We have found them actually quite cooperative of late, which is also really encouraging. Because obviously, I think they freely admit themselves, they have made a little bit of a mess of everything that's gone on. And I think they're trying to dig their way out of it. And of course they've got to, because they need to move on. And, you know, with the imminent potential closure of more stores, which of course they also said they were going to do, then the independent agent also has more opportunity. So I think that's right. I think on a general point, I would dream of being Amanda's minus 26%. It's a current aim we've got to get to minus 26%. We haven't achieved it yet, but we're trying hard. But we are seeing sales increase, definitely. Same sort of pattern in terms of, actually, we haven't done a 2020 booking. Every single one has been for 2021. We've done in the last fortnight. The biggest seller for us by a long, long way, and probably the biggest surprise I've had since lockdown, is that those sales are predominantly cruise, which has been quite incredible. Because if you'd asked me, I'd have said cruise first to get the problem of COVID and probably last to appear out the other end. Well, actually, how wrong am I? Cruise is easily the best seller amongst what we've been booking, and across the board with all the cruise lines. So
why do you think that is? Why do you think that is, Miles? Is that, are they driving it with price, or are they, because you're talking about new bookings as well, presumably?
Yeah. No, all new.
They were offering very good.
Bookings.
Really?
No. Some driven by price, but certainly not all driven by price. No, just through. I think what you've got with cruises, you've got two sets of clients. You've got the old diehards that know exactly what it's like on cruise ships. They know about norovirus and the potential of that, but at the same breath, they equally know how well cruise lines operate in terms of hand sanitizers everywhere, going to restaurants. So, you know, they're very good in terms of that sort of thing, cruises. So, you know, there is a level of confidence amongst existing cruisers that the product is safe. So I think the challenge for cruise lines coming out of COVID is not going to be with the diehards. It's going to be, can they attract these new to cruisers that actually don't know what the experience is like and have just seen the headlines on the news. So that's going to be the bigger challenge. But from our experience, the diehards are certainly very, very happy to rebook cruise, and in large numbers as well. And
all around the world, or in, you know, are they staying to sort of the traditional cruising favourites like
bit of absolutely everything. So fly cruise, ex-UK cruise, everything, but all for 2021, none for 2020.
I think the other thing they've done to help themselves, Lucy, is that they've released their programme right up until the end of 2022 in a lot of cases.
Yeah. So
a lot of the cruisers, you know, when you're booking that far out, people are quite sensibly thinking, you know, this is not going to be around for 2 years. Well, fingers crossed.
Yeah. So they feel more comfortable.
And toes crossed.
And so everything.
I think I would like to pay a compliment to all the cruise lines and say that throughout this COVID crisis, I think the cruise lines have been exceptional in the way they've dealt with just about every single element of the whole thing. That their communication has been clear. They've done things, as Amanda said, brought programs out early to sell more. They've really been on the ball throughout the whole, you know, every single cruise line. So, you know, 10 out of 10 to our cruise partners. They've been brilliant throughout this. And
they're reaping the rewards. You know, it was worth behaving like that because they're obviously now getting the bookings in. And I know, Miles, yours is predominantly mature people, but Amanda, you know, I know you said families, and you just mentioned there that like lots of families or bigger groups. Are you seeing that? Because lots of people have suggested that we'll feel so, because we've been isolated from our families for so long, that actually that might be a trend, that people will go away in these multi-generational groups. I know it's a trend anyway, but do you see that accelerating even more?
I think so, especially when people can plan for, you know, next year, next summer, next autumn. I think it's going to, the ones we are doing are not kind of, you know, that let's get on the first plane. They are definitely being planned for a big family celebration and a big holiday later in 2021. And I do think that trend will continue, especially, you know, when a lot of our parents and grandparents and things are, you know, are still going to be isolated for a number of weeks after we're all able to have a bit more freedom.
And something else I wanted to pick up on, man, because I saw you posting on Facebook this weekend, kind of an appeal to hotels really, and to sort of resorts overseas to sort of offer good opportunities for agents to get out to see what they're doing in terms of reassuring and health and safety things, so that agents can really explain that to customers. So what were you suggesting?
I think one of the things that you're faced with when you're dealing, you know, when you're face to face with clients, is when you can use your own personal experience, it adds so much weight to your conversation and your clients' confidence levels. And, you know, even when we've been talking about July and August, and I've been speaking to clients, it's like, well, I've paid my balance for August. I'm hoping to go in August. Sorry about that. Let me just turn that off.
Might be a booking.
Say that again.
Might be a booking.
Oh, yeah, it was Karen.
It's a mum.
It's pick up tomorrow. So I think that when you've got that confidence and you can explain and go through the journey, you know, more than ever, it's a massive PR exercise. And if I was a hotelier all over the world, I'd be saying, as soon as my hotel opens, please, travel agents and tour operators, anyone who's got anything to do with putting, you know, an element of confidence into that booking, please come and visit. You know, in some ways, I'd pay you to come and visit, you know, but do a journey, tell your clients, go on social media, explain what we've done. Because I think the more of us that are able to be on the first planes out to demonstrate that everything is safe, that we can show them the journey, I really feel like it would be the best PR money and exercise that the hotels could do. And equally, it would be a massive thank you for the travel trade in general, because we've all worked tirelessly without days off for no money, and in fact, as I said earlier, losing money. And I think, you know, most travel agents that I speak to, you know, especially our home workers, will happily be the first planes on there, being the guinea pigs to, you know, to come back and explain to the clients that it was all absolutely great. I'm looking forward to hotels saying, I've got that sunbed for the whole holiday. Happy days. I think it could be a better experience than one under normal circumstances. So I'll reserve my sunbed now to anywhere.
Can I make it?
Go on, Miles.
Can I make an appeal with airlines then? In terms of airlines, it's, you know, back when I started in travel in about 1901 or something like that, it was, you used to be able to jump on airline seats using 80/90s where you only paid 10% of the fare. And it was great for travel agencies, you know, short notice stuff. It was wonderful. Now, all of that has disappeared. So you've got the crazy situation where airlines will fly to Dubai, New York, wherever, with empty seats. And if a travel agent wants to go in those seats, they charge them full price because it has to go against the budget, which is completely mad when the seat is totally empty. So airlines out there, why not bring that back in? Let travel agents travel for 10% of the fare, there and back. Insist that they go economy one way. And if there's business class available, maybe business class the other way. And then they can talk about their experience in both and the virtues for both for customers. But what a great opportunity to start again in the industry, to go back a little bit to the way it used to be, because the opportunity is there, because potentially clients won't be filling those airline seats. But please don't treat them as, you know, full price stuff that needs to be paid for under the marketing budget. It's just completely crazy. But that's what's been happening lately, which is madness.
Okay.
And it's the same with suppliers as well. So where you've got a supplier, your big ones that have got committed stock, you know, again, don't send those out, those holidays empty. You know, as travel agents, you know, to get money off the mainstream tour operators has not been a possibility for many years. And I'm not saying it should be necessarily moving forward forever, but for the time being, we need to get as many people on those planes out there as quickly as possible that can come back and tell the tale, because at another booking, oh my God, another booking.
No wonder she's only minus 26%.
25% down now. Sorry, Karen.
Karen really wants to get hold of you.
Yeah,
Sorry,
really
we'll draw it to a close, because you've both come up with some great ideas. So I hope the airlines, I hope the tour operators, I hope the hoteliers are listening. We'll certainly make sure that we write some stories to emphasize those points, because as you say, everybody needs to do everything they can to get, you know, to get that reassurance back. And what better way than getting the agents who are in front of the consumers to do that. So thank you for your time. I'm so pleased that you are seeing, you know, it's better than when we last spoke. And I hope that just continues for you both. So thank you very much for joining us, to Amanda from Designer Travel and to Miles from
Thank you.
Travel.